Welcome to the Revenue Builders Podcast, a weekly show featuring B2B sales leaders and executives. Hosted by five-time CRO John McMahon and Force Management co-founder John Kaplan, the show goes behind the scenes with the people who have been there, done that, and seen the results. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe, rate, and review the show to help us reach more people. Revenue Builders is brought to you by Force Management. We help companies improve sales performance, executing the growth strategy at the point of sale. Find us at forcemanagement.com. Enjoy today's episode.
So, Joe, before we started this recording, you were talking a little bit about a performance mindset versus a knowledge mindset. First, tell me and tell the audience what you really mean by that, and let's go into that a little bit deeper. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people are very familiar with the concept of a fixed versus a growth mindset. The concept of performance mindset versus a knowledge mindset is something I've really taken to, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with the knowledge mindset. A knowledge mindset is about learning and continuous education, that continuous thirst for knowledge, and that's obviously something that is very admirable. But a performance mindset is focused on outcomes, and it's focused on achieving a goal. And I think when you look at kind of what we do in sales, our development, oftentimes we focus on teaching people how to pitch something. We teach people how to have knowledge of a product, how to execute a new business meeting. But the real bar we're developing against is how do you advance that new business meeting when you have all these obstacles that you know are coming? And so many people focus on development of when it will go right. For the highest achievers we know are the ones who can fold the art and the science. I think the art is kind of the root of this performance mindset. The performance mindset is how you master the art and the science in order to convert the new business meeting, in order to convert the ability to get to the EB when you know you have a ton of obstacles that are coming.
Let me go a little deeper into that. So, and I'm going to use an analogy of like any sport. If any sport I'm coaching someone and there's a play that they have to execute, they have to have the playbook, which tells them what they're supposed to do and where they're supposed to be on the ice or in a field and what they're supposed to execute. And then the skill is how to execute that. And then to your other point, the art, everyone may do it a little bit different, that skill. The way Kaplan might catch a ball might be different than the way you catch a ball and the way I catch a ball, but we still executed the play. We still had the knowledge of where we were supposed to be and how and what we were supposed to do. So there's really kind of, if I'm trying to understand this, there's really three elements to how you achieve that outcome. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so much of in sports, we talk a lot about the how, right? We talk about leveraging strengths. You know, if we're using a baseball analogy and you're charging the ball on a grounder, we're not just telling people, field the ball, field the ball, field the ball. We're telling them, pick a hop. You know, you don't want to get caught when the grass is meeting the dirt. You have all these nuances in order to perform, field the ball cleanly, step, throw to first base, right? And I think what I've seen over the years, the best leaders are focusing on the how in sales, the how to get through these things, because that's where success and failure is defined.
I agree. I think you can give people all the knowledge in the world, but if they don't have the skill set to pull it off and you're not doing things like role playing with them and actively participating when they're making sales calls to help them develop those skills, maybe they watch you do it, then they do it, those types of things. Skills are the hardest, right? Let's face it. You can tell me that I need to skate backwards and when I get to the blue line, take a shot into the upper right hand corner with the puck. Doesn't mean I can actually perform that skill. Skills need to be done hundreds of times, if not thousands of times to pull it off, right? So let's go deeper there. How do we train people more in sales on achieving those and mastering some of those skills?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's taking it a few steps further. Right now, when development and many times is focused on the science and the what could go right. You know, I look, for example, when I'm preparing for just a simple discovery call, let's take, for example, many people will say, all right, what do we want to accomplish? We're kind of projecting upon them. And I have a very kind of logical flow of every discovery calls. Let's start first with what's the customer trying to accomplish? Why did they take the meeting? Forget what we want. What are they trying to accomplish? Then I get into what we want. Okay, now let's develop an agenda to marry the two. Who's in the meeting on there? And tell me, let's learn everything about them. What are their wins? What are their interests? Now, finally, who do we bring to help deliver this and match credibility? And then last, before we even move on is, okay, now let's spend the most of the time. What worries us? Where are we exposed? And I think these areas, typically you get into this preparation and people project an agenda right away. They're already going into, this is what we're going to do. And you kind of say, time out. Why? How did we arrive at this? I understand what we want. So I think the focus on what worries us, what could knock us off, how do we respond? Where are we trying to take this? How do we make this into a strength?
So you're focusing a lot on what could go wrong. And if it goes wrong, how are you going to handle that situation? Which actually can give sales reps or anybody in any field a lot of confidence if they know that there's 10 things that can go wrong. And I've actually been able to handle all of those in a practice environment. So I'm ready for them. Versus people that just get hit with something and it goes wrong and then they don't know how to handle it. So for instance, you're given a presentation and the competition's champions in the room, the enemy, and they start hitting you with fear, uncertainty, and doubt and objections. How are you going to handle that situation?
And I think the holy grail of where we want our sellers is conviction and confidence, right? You have that conviction in the solution, the conviction that you're on the path, and the confidence that you're going to go win in that moment. I'll bet on that seller every time.
So can you walk through maybe one or two things that could typically go wrong in different stages of the sales process? And we can talk through some of those things and how you might handle them.
Yeah, let's look at one of the common ones in coming out of early stage process. You've got someone who you've identified as a good potential champion, but it's early. And so may or may not have earned the right to get to the EB, but you've spent some time, there's some significant value, you've uncovered some significant pain, and you want to go validate before you continue to invest time that, this will get funded. We know what we want to do with the EB. And that person gives you kind of that tried and true, I'm empowered, it's my decision. They're relying on me to make this decision. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but we're going to kind of stay focused here. And there's a number of different ways you can take that objection. And some people might, and I think unpacking why the objection's taking place. Is it too early? Have I earned that right?
Did you earn trust?
Yeah, exactly right. Have I earned trust? Have I proven credibility? Is this that important to them? Really? And so I think that's always a good example because I think people probe and test once and they say, oh, they're not going to take us. And they just aren't going to take us yet. You haven't earned the right yet.
You'll ask, why aren't we going into XYZ company? It's a, $50 billion revenue company. And they'll say, well, because, 5 other people tried to call in that account. No one was successful. But the point is no one was persistent enough to stay in that account. Then you assign that account to one person and they get in the account and sell a multi-million-dollar deal.
That's right. Smaller boxes have a very powerful way of creating focus and penetration.
Throw a lot of objections at your reps and see how they handle them and help them master how to handle those different objections.
We do. And I think we haven't really maybe formalized it, and we're trying to work through how do we maybe systematically formalize this in a number of different areas of enablement. But I think we work a lot through how would you handle this? What would you say if you handled this? And I think one thing we kind of addressed earlier was that comes up quite often is leveraging people's strengths. And I typically will talk about this a lot with early leaders, people that are getting promoted and maybe their first time in leadership. But I always talk, and it applies here though as well, which is you have to find your style. right? Not everyone can be you. Not everyone can be me. Many people are very comfortable in friction.
That's the art piece, though.
Exactly.
There's the knowledge, the skill, and now you're kind of referring to the art piece.
That's right. And I think a lot of the objection handling and the role playing, the art is what plays out, right? There's a substance in how you attack it, but it's developing the art of the attack.
Yeah. Well, I've always thought, like, if I need my people to be in the customer conversation. So the more that I can help them without thinking, because we're going to do it so many times, understand the elevator pitch, the 10 most common objections, how we drive value, what the competition's objections are going to be, and on and on. If I can get them so they can just rattle that off as if I woke them up at 2:00 in the morning, they don't have to think, right? If you're thinking, you're not in the customer conversation, then it gets very hard, to your point, to know how to react and how to respond. But if I'm fully prepared and I'm now in the customer conversation, it makes it a lot easier for me to understand how to react and how to respond.
I think you guys are talking about something great here, because with all of the knowledge and all the skills that are focused on sellers, you have to provide them the way, and the way is the outcome. And so, for example, when you say to somebody, if you said to a seller, I don't want you speaking about your product until you understand what a customer is trying to achieve, like from a business outcome, what business impact are they trying to achieve or are they struggling with, then what's technically required in order to achieve that and how they're going to measure success. Like that's kind of some of the things we focused on at Force Management. We had to give them the way, but make it simple and say there's 3 buckets that you have to fill up in some form or fashion. So it's not like telling them everything that they have to say, but before you pivot and say, hey, let me tell you how we do that, you have to train them that says, well, I know I have to be speaking to the technical required capabilities, and I know they have to be highly influenced by our differentiation. If I don't do that, then bad things can happen. If I speak about things that are more than what a customer cares about, then I'm too expensive. I don't listen to them. And if I'm not speaking about things that are impacting their business, I look like I don't understand their business. I always believe that you have to give them the way. And here's where you're going. And here are some milestones that you need to achieve. Now, many companies get focused on, well, they didn't say it the right way. Well, they didn't do it the right way. They didn't have the right inflection in their voice. And I think that's when people, confuse style with content. And I think it's really important to what we're talking about, because you empower people to bring their own style to the content that you are trying to get them to acquire from the customer. But if you don't do that, if you don't give them the way, and it can't be a script, then they'll never find it. And I find that that's one of the hardest problems that sellers have. They get all kinds of training, all kinds of scripts, all kind of objection handling, and they struggle with, how do I put it together? How do I play music with all of these sheets of music? How do I play something?
They're really happy a lot of times to get what they think they have, but they don't have. So they're really happy to have discovered some pain, happy to have discovered some metrics, happy to think that they have a champion, but they never test any of this stuff. They never test their discovery findings, for instance, with other people. Is this really how this is in this use case? And go around to different customers, different people inside the customer. And here's the metrics that I'm finding. Do those sound right to you? And the champion, is this guy really a champion? Like, if his boss got hit by a bus, would he get the job? Asking around, what type of influence does this person truly have? They're not testing all of their findings, and they're taking those things for granted. And sometimes they get caught. I can remember with somebody that's a super CRO right now, they called me and said, hey, we got this really big deal at a giant company in Europe. I fly over. We got a great champion. I go in a meeting with the champion and the sales rep and this leader come out and they say, well, what do you think? And I said, that guy is your enemy. No, John, he's not our enemy. He's told us a lot of stuff. He's met with us every time we wanted to meet. And I said, I'm just telling you, that dude is a fox and he is your enemy and you haven't tested that. And sure enough, a couple weeks later, they figured out the guy was the enemy. And what I'm trying to say is a lot of people aren't willing to test all of their findings. And that's a big part of understanding, to your point, Joe, what could go wrong and what are we going to do about it? If you just are not asking those questions and you're just happy to have the information or happy to have a champion, good luck to you.
And I think this really resonates with me because it's a great example, and you apply this concept of performance versus knowledge. You have a lot of knowledge on metrics, a number of different things that you just mentioned. That's not what we're trying to see. We're not trying to see if, in fact, we can help them. We are trying to truly provide a solution to a problem and actually formalize a partnership to allow us to drive value and solve this problem for them. That bar is so much higher, right? They have other projects internally that the CFO has to go make an ultimate summation game around where do they invest. And so I think we constantly, as sellers, look at we are the best solution for this problem. From a knowledge standpoint, that might address the situation. From a performance standpoint, i.e., we are paid to go provide solutions to companies. There is so much more you need to know and vet out.
Well, that happened during a downturn like 4 years ago, right? Where people weren't buying nice to have anymore. They were only buying need to have things. And what people found out pretty quickly was the CFO was getting involved. And the CFO was testing everything that people were buying. And people quickly, it became apparent, should have been apparent even before that you're not trying to steal budget just for your product. You're just trying to steal budget and be prioritized against all the other investments that they can make. And if your numbers don't come out right, you're not getting bought. They'll buy other things with a much higher return.
One of the other things that we're talking about on this art is I feel like we're not teaching sellers enough how to read human behavior. And I think that's so important now because people are learning how to speak to each other on the rep knows what to say to the buyer knows what to say to the rep. And we kind of focus at this level of missing like this principle of interest versus position. That's a heady, meaty concept that has to be broken down. Somebody will tell you their position, but very rarely their interest. And so many reps, they just deal at the position level. They hear something from a customer and they, a simple way to unlock it is to say why. Like, why is that person saying that to me? Why are they hesitant to take me to the economic buyer? And being intellectually curious is like something that we like to have everybody bring to the table from a skill set perspective. We try to hire for that. But you can also coach it because when you get resistance, which you're going to get, I think that's where the big fruit is, man. Like when you get resistance, how do you deal with the resistance and how do you teach people how to deal with resistance? That is like that's an elite skill. It's elite coaching. And I think you can just simplify it with getting to the person's interest versus their position. And the way you get to somebody's interest is you let them talk. You ask them questions and let them talk. Hey, I feel like you're resisting me a little bit on this. I've asked you twice to go to your boss and you've said no. Tell me what you're feeling right now. Like, why are you saying no to that? And, I think you can test for it in recruiting, but I also think you can coach it. What do you guys think about that? It's a big challenge. It's this art piece that is really stopping some of the, best potential reps I've seen. They just don't know how to navigate with friction.
Well, I think it goes back to what I was saying before, is like, you have to question or test the things that you hear, and you can't just accept that you're hearing what you want to hear. And Cap, you've seen me. I used my intuition a lot. I was always trying to be here, like in the moment. And I used my gut a lot, way more than I used my head. And I felt like, okay, I'm hearing that, but do I really believe that? My intuition was like, no, everything that's happening here is just, I feel like my stomach is turning. So, but to do that, again, your people need to be prepared so that they can be, one, in the customer conversation. Two, they have to be able to truly listen. And today it's really difficult for people to listen. People are horrible listeners. It's maybe the number one skill set that separates really good salespeople from everyone else, is their ability to truly be in the moment and listen. I've always said that people today, with all the texts and emails and Twitter and Instagram and this and that and the alarms and everybody in their face, that everyone is in a constant state of partial attention. And they can't be in the moment. And you're not here. You can't use your intuition. Then you're only relying on your head. And intuition is a super powerful thing. That is what allows you, Cap, to ask the questions that you need to ask, because you're intuiting and saying, I hear what they're saying, but that's not going down. Like, my stomach and my gut is not resonating with my head. There's a disconnect here. I got to start asking some questions. This doesn't feel right. And you know what? It takes a long time before you can actually trust your intuition. But if you don't start being in the moment because you aren't prepared, you'll never get a chance to start to understand whether or not your intuition is telling you what's really going on.
Joe, what are your thoughts on that?
I think one thing that jumped out, Cap, you mentioned about that ability to be human. I almost feel like many times as leaders, as coaches of sellers, we sometimes coach the athlete out of our sellers. And there's so much going on in their thinking, and maybe they do have the intention to listen. And, and John, obviously your listening includes absorbing and understanding, not just letting them speak.
Right.
But it is amazing how many times you'll see a seller who is just a charming, dynamic person when you're, out of that meeting, and you get in the meeting and they hear the objection and they just like attack it, or they're very mechanically, and they go to item A on the objection handling list, and it's like, look, I swung at the pitch you told me to swing at. And it's timeout. Just be you. Be a human. And we really, again, this is on me as a leader, as a developer of my talent, responsible for getting people successful and on to the next stage of where they want, of allowing their strengths and coaching their strengths, but making sure we highlight how you get to some of these places. Because I see this gap, it's not an EQ gap, but it's that being a human gap. And I think, John, to what you pointed out, we're in this age of instant gratification, send a text, hold on, do this, do that, multitasking, all these different things, and our attention spans are probably more limited than ever. I see people deviate from just the very fundamental things that determine whether the person opposite of the table is going to engage with you any further or not.
I think that intuition, just like speaking to the coaches and all of us, no matter what you're doing, you're leading others, you're leading your customer, provided you can take them to a place they can't get to on their own, they're going to be willing to follow you. So you're constantly kind of in this leadership kind of coaching situation. Intuition, I believe, comes from experience, and experience comes from practice. People that have great intuition have experience, and you don't get that experience without practicing. And so I have a great example of this one. When I think you, Johnny, you've heard me talk about this. I played behind a guy named John Rady at Boise State, and I would watch him on film, and I freaked out when I first got there. 18 years old. This guy was probably 20. He was faster than
20,
me.
He had a beard like yours.
Yeah.
20.
He was faster than me. He was, I don't know if he was stronger than me. But the biggest thing that I would notice would be his reaction to certain things. He was 2 years older than me. And I would go out to the field and I would think. And I remember a coach grabbing me and saying, "You're thinking too much." And when I was really in transition, I was trying to put the practices into place, but I wasn't doing it in a way that was going to be fast enough to get an outcome. So I could go from A to B to C, but by the time I did that, the running back would already be gone. And the coach looked at me and knew exactly what I was trying to do. And I think he grabbed me and he said, "Hey, look, you're not John Rady. You're John Kaplan." And I never got to the level of John Rady. I went on to play 15 years in the NFL, and I didn't, but I had fun. I had great college experience. But there's where I learned this. You see what great looks like, and you see the intuition that comes from experience, and that experience comes from practice. And in this case, that guy, he played 2 years of major college football more than I did. And so I have to be developed. I have to be coached. I'm not going to have the same intuition. If you're a leader, they're not going to have the same intuition as you.
But to your point, John, he was in the moment.
Oh, yeah.
He could have practiced and had intuition, but if he's not in that moment, because he's starting to think about something else, his girlfriend, or what he's going to do after practice or something like that, it's gone. That running back is gone. You have got to be in the moment.
I actually
That's
asked
where
him.
a lot of our sellers are not. They're not in the moment.
Yeah, I actually asked him how he could be so aware of what was going on in the backfield. And he broke it down to me and said, because I've seen this offensive tackle can only do 3 things. And he's only going to do 1 of 3 things. And I spot that first, and I don't have to worry about the other 2. That came from experience. And they broke down kind of what we're going back to business here, the knowledge and the skill. You don't have to think about those 5 other things, because if they don't do one of those 3 things, then it's going to be a run or a pass or what have you.
He wasn't thinking anymore.
He didn't have to.
Reacting. The best I've ever seen in my life in sales is a guy, which I actually talk about in the book, called Carlo Carpinelli. I saw him do it in his broken English, many, many sales calls. He was so curious and so in the moment, and he was so secure in himself, which is another key point. You can't get offended by what they say about your product or your company. And anytime somebody hit Carlo dead between the eyes with an objection, he'd look at them and go, "But why?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?" And it was so genuine, it was disarming, because he was really in the moment. And it was a genuine curiosity. He truly didn't understand why they thought that way. And out came the way they really thought. And then that was his ability to disarm them and say, that's not the way the product is or our capabilities are.
And I think what he's doing, Johnny, what he was doing, God rest his soul, is he was noticing that he was getting position from the customer. What was their interest? What's really behind what you're saying to me?
Yes. What's behind what you're saying to me? Why are you saying that? That's a curiosity there too.
And it's okay to slow down a conversation. Like, I think reps feel like they got to be on it. Like,
I got to get to the demo stage. I got to get to accept the POV.
Yes. And I think
slow down.
And when you give somebody else the floor and you just say, "Hey, I'm not tracking with you. that's so much more comforting to somebody who knows that you might not be understanding what they're saying, and you're just highlighting it. I don't think I'm understanding what you're saying. Could you please explain it to me? Versus playing along and just speeding it through. It's just like, that's experience. I think that's experience, and that's confidence and conviction that you talked about, Joe.
And I think that was validating that experience component. I think that was one of the more liberating things for me early in my sales career. When I understood that it was very logical, if not appropriate, to pause when you simply, I don't understand. You want to do this. Why does that make sense in your organization? I'm not trying. And when I would point out the human nature of, I am not trying to be resistant. I just genuinely don't understand what you're trying to drive to. How can I better support you? When I started realizing that those conversations actually moved me forward, earned more trust, people realized, oh, this is actually someone who seeks to understand. It was very liberating. But to your point, and to validating this point, I needed some of that experience, right? Because I thought you were supposed to be mechanical. I thought you were supposed to be that salesperson who has the right response for every counter, right? And you get into sales and you get some experience and you realize, wow, it's nothing about that at all.
Just being there and being in the moment really, for me, helps a lot versus being mechanical, being like, I got to do A, then I got to do B, then I got to do C. What I found is early on, I actually was mechanical. And then I realized I'm not myself when I'm mechanical. And to be honest, I'm nervous when I'm mechanical because I'm thinking too much about what they're going to say and what I might say next. I had to just let it go. I had to just be myself and be in the moment and use my intuition. And God, then I was so much more comfortable in sales calls than I was when I'm thinking about all the things that could go wrong.
What allows you to be in the moment, John, is preparedness. And I think that saying that says, the difference between stress and pressure is preparedness. Pressure is like an old friend. It's like a blanket. It's like something that lays on you, like it's heavy, but it's consistent and it's there. That's why I think those heavy blankets work so well for people. Stress is where you don't feel prepared, where you feel outmatched, you feel like you haven't seen something before. So people listening to this, I guess what we're trying to say is there's knowledge and skills that your company is going to provide you. You bring the character, the courage, the art, the curiosity by applying your style to the skills and knowledge to get those outcomes. And you got to put in the work. I want to make sure people are like, oh, he's just naturally good at that. I don't believe people are naturally just good at things. They look naturally good at things because of the amount of experience, known experience that they've converted into confidence and conviction and leveraged it. So that's kind of the point we want to try to make here. And Joe, this is really the point of where you come from, is like you want to be able to coach and develop to that. You want to be able to help with all of those things, but you got to participate in your own rescue. You got to put in the work. So those people that are getting coached, you have to put in the work.
And that's exactly right. I can want the best for you. We all know this, whether it's accountability, ownership, but if you don't have that performance mindset yourself, i.e., I aspire to this bar that I want to achieve, and I don't want to just achieve at something someone else sets for me. I want to achieve at something that I set, that is a bar much higher. I aspire to learn to improve myself.
Joe, let's talk about some of the training exercises that you do with people to give them the knowledge and the skill set that they need to be prepared when they go in there so they can be in the customer conversation.
Yeah, I think development is obviously a multi-pronged approach, right? You've got your productivity enablement functions that are helping support and drive, sales plays and motions and, driving standardization and consistency. We know that we as leaders own the development of our people. And so I think that's where a lot of the performance mindset, that's where a lot of that is driven. And so what I love is, every part of what we do as sales leaders is an opportunity to develop a forecast call, even where people don't think it's as obvious, but the opportunity to run a sales cycle, preparing for a discovery call, preparing for an MBM, preparing for every single different interaction in a sales cycle. What I love about it is I get to prepare. And John, I could very much relate to what you're saying is, I hate the stress that comes from lack of preparation. My first sales job I was selling Oracle ERP applications hosted before there was a thing called the cloud, hosted to mid-market companies in Southern California. And I was about 22 years old, and I had CFOs from companies looking at me saying, you think I'm going to put the most important applications of my business on boxes and in a data center that I don't have the keys to, and I'm going to listen to you, a 22-year-old. By the way, I had probably about 5 different CFOs who literally said those words to me. And when I would get ready for meetings, I would have that, look, different things drive us. And fear is a heck of a motivator. And
number one. It's the number one motivator for people.
And I would prepare, because I'll be damned if I was going to stand in front of a CFO who was going to look at me and say, what do you know? Because I knew that bar was so high, someone who had all that experience, their most important applications, a concept that was definitely foreign at that time. And cloud wasn't even a thing yet. And that just drove me to do exhaustive preparation. I would prepare exhaustively. And I think many of the sellers, all of the sellers that have been in my organizations know you're going to prepare as much, if not more, in my organization than you probably ever have before. And I'm a big believer. It's not a believer. I think it's a fact that we've proven is there's no such thing really as closing. It's how openers are closers. And opening the sales cycle is where all of your ground is laid. This is where the give to get, you determine the playing field. You're not emotionally tied. And there is a lot of different permutations of what can be laid out and what can be agreed to. And it takes a lot of preparation to define that playing field in early conversations. And we're going to go walk through it. And I think that's where the magic and the power of development really takes place, is one by one. And you do it, you can do a team development. Hey, Mauricio has a Disco call on Thursday. It's a team call on Monday. We're going to go prep for 90 minutes. We're going to go prep this call out. Let's
love that.
This out.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many opportunities where I think preparation and development merge. Because one thing that's one of our challenges, time management, right? One of my big fears, right, of my teams. We talked about sports analogies. Well, we're forced to practice 90% of the time in sports and only play games 10% of the time. That's the schedule, etc. In sales, people don't have the same conditioned proportion, but we know whether we've learned the hard ways, we've also been in amazing cultures where we actually do understand, no, you do practice more than you play in sales as well. And conditioning that time management to drive the preparation, to drive the practice, to ensure that the execution, because you actually do save time because you've practiced and prepared, you ironically save time on the execution, is a big area of the development.
Yeah. I used to have people prepare. I'd say, because you come into a meeting with all of your peers, and I want you to be prepared to present these 5 things. At the end of the meeting, a couple of days later, they'd say, hey, John, I prepared these 5 things to present, but you didn't have me present them. I said, well, are you ready to present? And they said, yeah. And I go, good for you. Meanwhile, I had them do other types of skill preparation, like role playing, and you can make it fun. Like I've done Jeopardy, where I rented some things and had people play Jeopardy. I've done, team challenges where you make them play for like some prizes. And when you put a bunch of sales guys on teams and they're playing for prizes, look out. They're going to try to kill the other team. And good stuff comes out of that. And some of the most powerful stuff was just taking like round tables, in one of these conference rooms, and then having the reps go table to table and call on different buyers within the same account. So you draw up an account scenario, and then Joe is, let's say, the economic buyer. Kaplan is a CIO, but Kaplan's actually the enemy because his son-in-law is actually working for the competition, let's say. So you draw up these scenarios and they have to go from table to table, each team, and then they have to come back and at the end present what their findings are and who they think they'd sell to and what would be their message, like what pains did they find out, all of those things. Boy, talk about really good practice in understanding where your teams are doing really well and where they're falling down. Those types of role plays are really powerful. And then to your point, Joe, you can also do very specific role plays. Like, what are you going to say when you get to the economic buyer? Those types of things.
You know what I like doing to find a pulse of my organization? Like sometimes I'll be sitting in an account review or forecast review and wondering, am I the only one seeing this? Am I the only one? And every now and then I have to test it. And some of the things that I like to do, I really had some good success with this. I'd create an environment that was open, and so people wanted to present their opportunity. So that's a key thing. You can't make people feel like crap about it. I used to say it's okay not to know, but it's not okay not to be doing anything about it. And what I would do is I'd bring in the team, and now you can do it on Zoom, you can do it whatever medium you need to do it. But I would bring them in, and then I would let them speak about their opportunity for like 15 minutes. Unabated. Nobody interrupts them. They go through whatever they want to go through. And then I would have the individuals that are watching, they could ask questions and say where they thought the holes in the plan were. But I had this thing that I would say, anybody who throws a rock, you got to go pick it up. What I meant by that was that would go for 10 minutes or something like that. So I do maybe 10 minutes and then 10 minutes of the rock throwing, and then you go pick it up. The individual goes away and they think about everything that people said. And I told them, you don't have to respond to it. So you could be like a duck and let the water roll off your back. If you feel like you've got that covered in your plan, this is not for you to just tell us, that we didn't have all the information about. But it was so powerful because the people that would get involved and knowing that you had to, okay, this is a gap, you don't have a champion. Well, if that was your rock, then you had to explain, who do you think the champion is? How would you go about it? It was really, really powerful. And those were some of the greatest facilitations that I've had because everybody was involved. And then everybody wanted to bring their opportunity in.
Well, I like the fact that they didn't have to respond to all the objections that people were saying was going wrong with the opportunity. They could just listen, not be offended, take the information, go away, think about it, and come back and decide what they were going to do. I really love that.
That's Johnny, original. Thank you. So they'd come back and they
I didn't know you were so original sometimes.
Yeah, they represent, Johnny, based upon what they heard. And if yours didn't get covered, but the people that had the rocks, and if somebody had something that they didn't, cover and there was still a gap, that person would say, let me give you some feedback on what I was explaining to do. And it was really, really powerful. Got everybody involved. And I think took a lot of pressure off me as the leader. I found that some of the greatest answers were in the room.
Oh, always. The greatest answers are always in the room. They're never your answers because you're the CRO or the VP of this or the director of that. The answers are with your reps. The best answers are always with your reps.
And it's interesting, there's all these opportunities to have these conversations. I talk to first line leaders a lot around this opportunity to develop at every moment of the day. And many people are so focused around kind of getting through the day, right?
Yeah.
Getting through the call. And what better opportunity, and Cap, I think you just outlined that call, and it may have been on an actual forecast call, but you're going through it, champions breaking down, you're identifying an issue that everybody has to some extent on a number of deals in their pipeline. And there's nothing more impactful than blowing up the forecast call at that point and saying, all right, we're going to spend 50 minutes on unpacking this together, team. They'll get way more out of that 50 minutes than, and you can go get your deal inspection done another way, another moment that evening, etc. But the development in that moment, and then again, facilitating that team contribution. Hey, we're going to help our teammate box up his deal, figure out how to get unstuck. And then we love it. Because then 2 days later, hey, what happened?
Yeah.
What did they say on your call?
Right.
And Johnny, it also helps you as a leader, like you talk about. I had trouble being, in the meeting instead of running the meeting. And so it actually allowed me to be more present in the meeting where I could listen to what other people were saying. I could also see trends because you do a couple of these, you do somebody's, what I started to do is I do like, a half hour every Friday, somebody picks a deal. And this is what we would go through. And so after a few times, after a few Fridays, you're starting to get a really good gut feel what your teams are struggling with and what they're doing really, really well. And then it helps me. Am I going to focus on trying to do things, or am I going to go to development, tell them they need more help on what they do really, really well? Nope. I'm going to start using the resources and time to help them get unstuck on what they don't do real well.
Well, it's because in the beginning, when you're first leading, you think that you have to be the answer man. And what you realize is there's people that are working for you that are more knowledgeable in specific areas and more skilled in specific areas. And that takes the pressure off of you as a leader. You have them present that knowledge and you have them develop that skill for the team. Like I had a guy out of Sweden one time. Every time I made sales calls with him, he'd say, we're going to go see my champion. And it was never a champion. So I said, okay, the next European meeting, you're going to get up in front of everyone. And guess what you're going to present? How to find, develop, and test champions. He gave that presentation, did a great job, never looked back. He wound up being highly successful. But using the people on your team for the things that they do way better than you, let them train. Takes the pressure off of you.
You can also do, I'm sure you've seen this, Joe, where you have the same people complaining about the same stuff. What I used to like to do is, if it's that important to an individual to keep bringing it up every time we get on the phone as a group, I would get them involved in the solution. Yeah. Some of the greatest solutions that I had, because I knew that they were passionate about the problem, but they just didn't know how to fix it. And I didn't necessarily know how to fix it, but if they were so passionate about the problem, it's really hard in a group of people to say, well, I'm going to complain about it, but I don't want to do anything about it. And if you're a leader and you're just trying to create space for yourself and create space for your team, takes some of that passion that people are turning into emotion, like bad emotion, and get them involved in the solution. Like, we're not getting the right leads from our BDRs or SDRs or whatever. And say, okay, next week, I want you to get in the pit with your SDRs, and I want you to come back and tell us what you're seeing. Like, what are they seeing? Is it a skill problem? Is it a knowledge problem? And normally you get some really good output there. Or at minimum, you get the complainers to quit complaining.
Empowerment's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So, Joe, how has the performance mindset, how has it, since you've been doing it for a while, how has it manifested and what has it manifested in your organization? Have you seen some changes in some people or changes in the culture, changes in the mindset? What have you seen?
I think culturally, what I've loved seeing is, look, everyone wants, I think in human nature, bringing the best out of people want to be better. And I think this concept of the performance mindset has really, it's kind of been a rallying cry that we have. And I've seen people locked arms and rallying toward this obsession toward being great and knowing and understanding, and most importantly, embracing the fact that the bar is high. And it's a competitive world out there. There are thousands of solutions, tens of thousands of salespeople, and we have to be above all of that noise. And I've loved the fact that my organization, this is at the backbone. This is one of our 5 imperatives for what makes us unstoppable, is this performance mindset. This is just how we operate. It's how we train together. It's how we learn. It's how we prepare. It's how we attack the day. And so really, this has kind of become part of our DNA. And we just talk about it. People understand, hey, we're doing these things. It's part of our performance mindset, because it's about going much further than just having the knowledge. We've got to go perform at an elite state.
Do you start to see people on the teams helping each other?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Practicing together, pushing each other. And that's the big power of the unlock, right? When peers are holding each other accountable, grabbing each other to practice together, to help perform together, you've got a culture.
Or knowing that they're going to be tested, because Joe's telling them they're going to be tested when they come on Monday. They're all going to work together to make sure that they have it right.
That's right.
But also rewarding that behavior, Joe, like rewarding the behavior of when you see people that are adapting the performance mindset and knowing that there's a difference between skill level and experience level on the team, and some of the more experienced, skilled people are ready, willing, and able to help some of the others. Like, those are signs that you got something going on good on your team.
I agree.
And you're rewarding that behavior, you're highlighting that behavior, you're praising that behavior, versus just, talking about compliance every week, what people are not doing, versus what people are doing great.
And
you're feeding it.
Yes.
That's absolutely the root of it. Don't do it because I'm driving you to do it. Certainly I'll test you and I'm going to probe and inspect and do those things. You're doing this for yourself. You benefit from this ultimately.
One thing I wrote down earlier, which I really liked that you said on confidence and conviction, I would just encourage anybody out there that's doing any development, that's doing any reviews, that's doing any interaction with your team. Do you have a compliance culture, or do you have a confidence and conviction culture? Like, I see some people get a hold of MedPick, whatever the qualification methodology is, and it's a compliance culture. It's like you either have it or you don't, versus I'm taking it to the performance mindset, and I want to take it to stretch it as far as I can to get mastery level, not just awareness level of what the skill is, but to get mastery level. If you can get that going on your team, whew. But there's so many leaders that are just doing compliance. You can hop on any call and all you can hear is just, you're screaming at the scoreboard. You're either doing it or you're not doing it. And you're not helping people really get mastery at it. It's really powerful. I love the concept you brought to us today, Joe, on performance mindset. I love it.
Joe, with the last couple of minutes here, tell us a little bit about Kong and what they do, and whether or not you're hiring, and how people can find you if you're hiring.
Well, first, we're absolutely hiring. So we want to bring in the best and the brightest. There's a big API revolution taking place and an evolution taking place. We're kind of moving from this wave of API management solutions. If you look at the market, you look at what's taking place in the world, APIs power everything. We know that, right? You go layer on generative AI, all powered by APIs. It's literally the backbone that powers innovation. So Kong is the next wave of API platforms that's driving innovations, that's allowing companies at scale to take the building blocks of APIs to drive innovation. A decade ago, companies were disrupting with technology, competing and winning with technology. Now it's table stakes. We know that. The companies that are driving with API-led innovation are the ones that are going to win. And there's this kind of old world of just managing APIs, right? Management is controlling something that is kind of getting unwieldy. That wave is kind of proven to be untenable in order to drive companies into the next wave. So we are growing pretty quickly. We've got pretty ambitious goals. We're looking for the best and the brightest to build out our global go-to-market team.
Tell us a little bit about the role of AI in this unlocking of APIs, and tell us a little bit about that, because there's a lot of people listening that are trying to figure out how to jump into AI as a career. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I think we would all agree that this generative AI space is pretty fascinating. I think, I've understood AI from a number of angles for quite some time. I think it's really important to emphasize it's more of this generative AI and this big quantum leap moving forward. Look, I think there's a lot of companies out there that are trying to navigate a new world where generative AI allows them to build products faster, maybe augments the sales workforce. What I love about Kong is I don't have to worry about us being on the right side of AI. Generative AI is kind of constructed where APIs are powering it all. And I think there's a lot of companies in the world, I think there's a lot of hype obviously around it. I think a lot of companies, at least, we focus primarily in the enterprise, and a lot of these companies are really trying to navigate how do I go apply this at scale? And they're pushing LLMs, and you actually have this, there's a very common theme I hear from my customers, which is my executives are saying, we need you to cut our budgets. We need you to take that cost savings and we need you to allocate the investment into AI. And we need to scale our company leveraging technology and not people. And when you do that, you say, okay, great. How are you going to do that? Many companies don't understand how to do it. They're assembling centers of excellence around AI, but there's so many different parameters around governance, control, cost management, PII, data control. And that's where Kong helps and comes into play. So whereas already in the API world, we provide one governance layer and one policy across all of your endpoints, we do that with managing your LLMs as well. So we have an AI gateway that helps manage the distribution of your LLMs, management, data protection.
That's a big issue.
Cost management. It's a huge issue. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of hype out there that say generative AI is going to kind of go put a lot of things and disrupt. But at the end of the day, who drives the standards and the processes at all of these enterprises? Humans. And so I actually think there's still a big uncertainty around how do we leverage these LLMs at scale to go drive the power of what they're capable of. You need technologies like Kong to govern this and put the processes and the controls in place so that you can leverage this at scale while knowing that your company is protected, while you're not knowing that you're not feeding data into the models or that you're not just burning unnecessary costs.
Awesome.
Good job, Joe.
Well
Joe
done.
Eskenazi, CRO at Kong. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I loved it. I appreciate it.
Well done, buddy.
John Kaplan, thanks, buddy. And thanks to
Got it.
everyone for listening to another episode of the Revenue Builders Podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to check us out at forcemanagement.com.